Chapter 468, Puppet Master. Chapter 468, Puppet Master. The seventh war god under the command of Emperor Xiao of Tang of the East. Jian Wushuang was astonished. He had heard of Tang of the East. It was a bloodthirsty kingdom on the Nanyang continent, where Jian Wushuang had adventured for some time. But he had never heard of Emperor Xiao of Tang of the East or the war gods. Why, don't you understand? Di Jing looked at him with great interest. Respected elder, I know the Tang of the East. I've only heard that there is a mysterious monarch, but I've never heard of Emperor Xiao or the war gods. Jian Wushuang frowned and said. The Tang of the East that you know is completely different from the one I mentioned. Di Jing laughed. The one you know was created by my master. As for the real one, you've never seen it. If you have an opportunity in the future, you'll know the prosperous Tang. Jian Wushuang was stunned speechless. The Tang of the East on the Nanyang continent was a slaughterous dynasty and country of death. But the Tang of the East mentioned by Di Jing was a prosperous world. Well, it's useless to explain to you, boy, Di Jing said with a wave of his hand. Jian Wushuang stopped speaking as his attention turned to the other figure in the hall. Elder, who is he? Jian Wushuang looked at the old man with white hair and beard, who had obviously been dead for many years. He was the owner of this cave mansion, Di Jing said. Owner of the cave mansion? Jian Wushuang was surprised. I thought it was constructed by you. Of course not. Di Jing said, curling his lips, I'm going to die. Why would I construct a cave mansion? He is puppet master. He seemed to have been famous in Divine Land. In the information he left, he claimed to be the first puppet maker in Divine Land. First puppet maker in Divine Land? Jian Wushuang was intrigued. This was extraordinary. Unfortunately, no matter how strong his puppets had been, his own life was limited. When I fought those Cloud Realm experts in the Flaming Mountains, I discovered the cave mansion, so I chose this place to cultivate in seclusion, said Di Jing. This hall is the real core of the cave mansion, where he left 4 opportunities for future experts. It shouldn't have been discovered yet. You're lucky that I brought you here. 4 opportunities. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up immediately. Boy, it's too early for you to get excited. The 4 opportunities are accompanied by tests. 3 tests are about making puppets, while I guess you're not good at it. Di Jing looked at him. As a powerful expert who had stayed in the cave mansion for over 1,000 years, Di Jing knew everything in the cave mansion. Jian Wushuang smiled reluctantly. Making puppets? Not good at it. He knew nothing about it. That's just it. Although there are 4 opportunities, you can get 1 at most. Even then, I wonder if you're up to it, Di Jing sneered. Boy, come with me. At least there's still an opportunity. Half a loaf is better than no bread, said Jian Wushuang, as he shrugged. He followed Di Jing into a secret chamber next to the hall. The test is in the secret chamber, Di Jing said as he looked at Jian Wushuang. If you can pass this test, you'll get a good reward. Value the opportunity. Jian Wushuang forced a smile and stepped inside without a second thought. He saw a vacant ground with a towering figure in the center. A puppet fighter? Jian Wushuang was not surprised to see it. Puppet Master had claimed to be the first puppet maker in Divine Land and had constructed this cave mansion, filling it with puppet fighters. It was unsurprising that he would use a puppet fighter in his test. The puppet fighter immediately opened his eyes and looked at Jian Wushuang. The Saint Realm? The puppet fighter asked with a hint of surprise. Oh! Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and said, a puppet fighter with intelligence. There were 2 types of puppet fighters, intelligent ones, and non-intelligent ones. They were very different. Puppet fighters with intelligence were as smart as human beings, but they were usually not very strong. Puppet fighters without intelligence were much stronger. For example, Jian Wushuang's blood puppet and other puppet fighters he had met in the inner and outer layer of the cave mansion belonged to this type. Jian Wushuang had once met puppet fighters with intelligence, such as Jin Ling and Mu Shan in the Ancestors' Land. Human warrior, you're just a Saint Realm expert, so I'll restrain my battle strength to the Saint Realm level. As long as you defeat me, You can get the opportunity my master left in this secret chamber, the blonde puppet fighter in blue robes said. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly in acknowledgement. Are you ready? The blonde puppet stared at Jian Wushuang. As soon as he finished his words, he paused a second and then rushed forward. The blonde puppet bounced forward like a bomb. Simultaneously, a giant axe appeared in his hand. He swung it violently at Jian Wushuang as he made his approach. The giant axe cut the air with immense power and left a bright edge in the void. Nice axe skill, Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. He knew that puppet fighters with intelligence could use manual skills, unlike puppets that could only use physical strength. Jian Wushuang started to counterattack. He swept his sword up and blocked the axe shadow heading toward him. Clang! After the fierce collision, the blonde puppet continued to swing the giant axe in a flurry of attacks that oppressed Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang lifted his sword to resist as he thought in surprise, this puppet fighter's power is indeed of the Saint Realm level. However, his axe skill is extremely delicate. He's barely comparable to a novice lord. It was the test of puppet master. It would be impossible for a Saint Realm expert to defeat a puppet fighter of novice lord level. However, it was not difficult for Jian Wushuang, as he could easily fight against two intermediate lords at the same time. Jian Wushuang quickly started to attack. Chapter 469, Six-Story Pagoda. Chapter 469, Six-Story Pagoda. Swoosh! Bright sword light flashed like lightning and penetrated the void. The sword movement Jian Wushuang used was desperation. He used his force to violently break the blonde puppet's axe movements and knock him backwards. The blonde puppet regained his footing. There was a white mark on his body left by Jian Wushuang's sword. If he had been an ordinary lord, he would have been dead. You won. He looked at Jian Wushuang and threw a black flowing light to him. He said, "This is your reward for passing the test." Jian Wushuang caught it. As he inspected it, a strange expression flashed on his face. The black flowing light turned out to be a mini black pagoda with 6 stories, each of the same height. A pagoda. Jian Wushuang left the secret chamber. Doubts churned in his mind as he returned to the palace to meet Di Jing. Not bad, boy, Di Jing smiled faintly. Respected elder, is this pagoda the good thing you mentioned? Jian Wushuang asked skeptically. Boy, don't be too greedy, Di Jing said as he looked at him. It's called 6-story pagoda. It's definitely a good thing in Divine Land and it's useful to you. 6-story pagoda? Jian Wushuang whispered. Try to bind to it, Di Jing said. Without hesitation, Jian Wushuang used his blood to bind to it. He met no resistance from the black pagoda at all and finished the process quickly. Well, Jian Wushuang realized the difference after binding to it. He could clearly sense a restriction on the first story of the pagoda. It was very complex and enigmatic. At first glance, Jian Wushuang could feel it but not understand it. What a mysterious restriction, Jian Wushuang sighed. Di Jing said, Boy, there is a restriction on each story of the pagoda. They were all slaughter restrictions. You've meditated on the slaughter origin, right? Di Jing looked at Jian Wushuang. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded. He mainly meditated on 2 types of origin, world origin and slaughter origin. In the past, his comprehension of slaughter origin had been higher than that of world origin. After adventuring in Marquis Baymore Cave Mansion, his comprehension of world origin had vastly improved. He had formed 4 world origin marks and only 1 slaughter origin mark. That's it. Di Jing responded with a smile and said, the 6 restrictions are extremely profound and each contains 999 slaughter occults. Since you've meditated on slaughter origin, you can also meditate on these slaughter occults. The reference of the slaughter occults will greatly improve your speed in comprehending it. When you comprehend all 999 slaughter occults, you can unriddle the first restriction. Then, it'd mean that you've really entered the slaughter Dao. Jian Wushuang was stunned, but exhilaration soon took over. He turned to sense the first restriction in the pagoda and felt the existence of many slaughter occults. Most of them were new to Jian Wushuang. No wonder you said that the 6-story pagoda is useful to me. It's such a great opportunity for me, Jian Wushuang said in gratitude. The first restriction was obviously a shortcut to the slaughter Dao. Dao. Beyond the origin was Dao. When comprehension of the origin reached the peak, the origin would naturally transfer into Dao. For example, slaughter origin would transfer into slaughter Dao when his comprehension reached an extremely high level. Dao was much more powerful than origin. That was why many experts and marquises would fight tooth and nail for the Dao weapon. Dao weapon was involved with Dao. However, Dao was too enigmatic. Even though the Marquis experts were strong, they were not qualified to have access to Dao. In Divine Land, only 10 sovereigns and 3 ancestors had entered the level of Dao. How extraordinary the 6-story pagoda was, that its first restriction alone could enable Jian Wushuang to enter the slaughter Dao. Boy, you've won this advantage. Now I'll send you away, Dijing said. Thank you, respected elder, said Jian Wushuang. At the same time, he bowed to the puppet master. Dijing raised his eyebrows. He waved his hand and a huge wormhole immediately appeared in the void in the hall. Dijing's ease at creating such a huge wormhole shocked Jian Wushuang. The latter revised his estimation of Dijing's strength. Go in, Dijing said. Without hesitation, Jian Wushuang stepped into the wormhole and soon disappeared. After he had left, someone walked slowly out of the secret chamber. It was the blonde puppet who had fought with Jian Wushuang. He came to Dijing in the hall and asked, Sir, may I ask why you said your 6-story pagoda was my master's 4th test? The blonde puppet was confused. Puppet Master, the owner of the cave mansion, had only set 3 tests, which were about making puppets. The opportunities after passing the tests were also about making puppets. The 4th test had actually been set by Dijing just now. His purpose was obvious, that was, to give the 6-story pagoda to Jian Wushuang. Dijing remained silent while he thought to himself. Young master is indifferent and doesn't trust others easily. Even I'm not qualified to get her pledge, but she gave him one. What's more, he can refine young master's icy heart poison. It's so incredible. He's of great use to young master, but he is too weak now. Dijing had given the 6-story pagoda to Jian Wushuang to help him improve his strength as quickly as possible. He had concealed the truth about the 6-story pagoda's ownership because of his identity. It would be better to keep Jian Wushuang in the dark. Chapter 470 Disaster. Chapter 470 Disaster. Numerous lords from both sides had gathered in the palace. Now, they fled in terror. Run! Run! A forlorn voice reverberated through the palace. The lords escaped in a panic, in all directions. A red-haired middle-aged man who radiated a mighty aura was in the midst of a frenzied slaughter. He was the puppet fighter, who had sat on a throne at the front of the palace. He had kept to the sidelines until the gold-armored puppets and 4 golden-purple puppets had lost the ground. Now, he erupted into action with overwhelming strength and killed many lords from the 2 camps. Even superior lords, such as Black Yuan Lord, were frightened of him. The red-haired middle-aged man was a terrifying Marquis puppet. Let's go. Hurry up. Black Yuan Lord growled with a cold look. Behind him, many lords from Marquis Piaoshua camp were escaping swiftly. Thoughts of the Marquis puppet's interspatial ring were banished from their minds. At this moment, buzz. An immaterial wave suddenly appeared in the surrounding area. A huge wormhole materialized and a figure slowly stepped out of it. Swordsman. Black Yuan Lord recognized him. Black Yuan Lord, what happened? Jian Wushuang asked in surprise. Jian Wushuang took in the situation. A red-haired middle-aged man stood in front of an advanced lord from the hostile camp. He casually slapped the lord, and the latter's head shattered. Oh! Jian Wushuang was terrified. How terrifying the puppet fighter is. He is much stronger than my blood puppet. With 10 blood gems, blood puppet could unleash its full strength, which was comparable to the battle strength of Marquis level. However, as a Marquis puppet, blood puppet was weaker than the red-haired middle-aged man. Blood puppet's power could not hold a candle to the puppet fighter. Puppet master placed such a powerful puppet fighter in this palace? Jian Wushuang sighed to himself. Swordsman, run. Be quick. Iron Saber Lord shouted. Jian Wushuang did not hesitate. He ran out of the palace with Black Yuan Lord and his other comrades. They continued to move toward the outer layer. Eventually, they arrived at the outer layer. They were able to take a brief respite and calm themselves. The puppet fighter is terrifying. He's so powerful that even a marquis can't fight him. Iron Saber Lord sighed. What happened to this puppet fighter? When we were fighting the 4 golden purple puppets, he did not move. But when we defeated them, he began to attack us, Loftiness Lord said with a frown. Who knows? I guess the master of the cave mansion planned this. Silver Wing Lord curled his lips. Shut up. Black Yuan Lord shouted frostily as he looked at the other lords. Originally, Marquis Piaoxua Camp had more than 50 lords in the palace. When the puppet fighter attacked, those lords had scattered and only a dozen lords had escaped. No one knew what had happened to the other lords. Jian Wushuang and his other comrades waited in the outer layer for half a day. Other lords trickled out of the inner layer in succession. More than 30 lords from their camp had survived. I've asked Spirit Lord to tell these lords to leave immediately. Half a day is long enough to escape, so those who haven't emerged must have died in there, Black Yuan Lord said, eyes narrowed. The other lords were filled with grief. It was a disaster for both camps to be attacked by the puppet fighter. Numerous lords had died in his hands. What a tragedy. Iron Saber Lord sighed as he shook his head. Lords were rare and now they had lost dozens. Our camp has suffered a great loss, but Marquis Tsungyua Camp did not fare better. Black Yuan Lord looked toward the lords from Marquis Tsungyua Camp, who had gathered next to them. Less than 30 lords from Marquis Tsungyua Camp had gathered in the outer layer. It was clear that they had suffered heavy losses. Compared to their camp, we were lucky. After all, we gained much in the inner layer. We received a Dao weapon and grabbed 4 interspatial rings from the golden purple puppets. Each ring must hold numerous treasures. Black Yuan Lord smiled. Of course, it's all thanks to you, swordsman. If you had not killed Demon Soul Lord and Myriad Islands Lord, we would not have obtained the 4 interspatial rings. Black Yuan Lord looked at Jian Wushuang. Demon Soul Lord and Myriad Islands Lord had led the lords from Marquis Tsungyua Camp in battle, but they had been killed by Jian Wushuang. Without leaders, those lords had been ineffective in their fight against Marquis Piaoxua Camp. Right, swordsman, you were taken away by someone, but then you returned suddenly. What on earth happened? Black Yuan Lord asked. The other lords from Marquis Piaoxua Camp looked at Jian Wushuang in curiosity. They wondered where he had gone and what he had encountered after he had been unceremoniously grabbed by the giant hand. Jian Wushuang was prepared for this question. He raised his eyebrows and answered, I don't know what happened. I just know that an expert grabbed me and asked me for a drop of venom that I used to kill Myriad Islands Lord. Then he let me go. Chapter 471, The New Lord Arrives. Chapter 471, The New Lord Arrives. Jian Wushuang would not tell them that he met Di Jing at the bottom of the cave mansion. If the news was spread that great demon Di Jing was still alive, it would cause a sensation in the entire flaming battlefield or even the entire divine land. That's it. Black Yuan Lord frowned. Although he doubted it a little, he did not ask anything further. Then they left the cave mansion. Since the powerful Marquis puppet had prevented them from searching for treasures, they had to leave. The exploration of the cave mansion had to stop for now. As for the other secrets in the cave mansion, they would have to wait for the 2 camps' marquises to explore personally. In the huge campsite outside of the cave mansion, the lords from the Marquis Piaoxua camp did not rush to leave. Even though their camp had lost many lords in this action, they had still gained a Dao weapon and 4 interspatial rings. The surviving lords could receive corresponding battle achievements according to their contributions. With the help of Jian Wushuang's realm technique, Loftiness Lord had been able to resist until Black Yuan Lord came and then gave the Dao weapon to him. In the fight for the 4 interspatial rings, as Jian Wushuang killed Demon Soul Lord and Myriad Islands Lord, the Marquis Piaoxua Camp had been able to obtain the 4 rings. Jian Wushuang had contributed the most, so he would receive amazing battle achievements. 120,000 battle achievements. A flicker of excitement flashed in Jian Wushuang's eyes. It was known that the price for entering Baymore Cave Mansion was 100,000 battle achievements. And he had now obtained an abundance of battle achievements, which could be exchanged for a large number of treasures. Spirit Lord stood in front of Jian Wushuang and said politely, "Swordsman, those battle achievements can also be used outside the treasure vault. If you need a treasure that isn't in our vault, our camp will try to help you get it, as long as you pay enough battle achievements." He had heard about Jian Wushuang's amazing battle results in Puppet Master Cave Mansion. Oh! Jian Wushuang nodded inwardly. "That's right. And there is another thing I need to discuss with you." Spirit Lord looked at Jian Wushuang and said seriously, "You know, we've lost many lords in this action, and many of them were in charge of territories. Now they are dead, so those territories, of course, need new lords." "Spirit Lord, you want me to take charge of a territory?" Jian Wushuang asked in an odd tone. "Yes." Spirit Lord nodded with a smile. "Normally, if you have the strength of a novice lord, you're qualified to take charge of a territory. Now you have proved that you're strong enough to handle a territory. What's more, with such strength, you won't want to continue traveling in the flaming battlefield, will you?" Jian Wushuang did not know how to react. Generally, Saint Realm experts would travel in the flaming battlefield, aside from any special cases. For example, if a new cave mansion emerged, the lords would turn up. Although Jian Wushuang was a Saint Realm expert, he was a bit stronger than an ordinary intermediate lord. It would be inappropriate for him to travel around the flaming battlefield. Moreover, he had lost interest in fighting in the flaming battlefield. "In that case, I'd like to accept your suggestion," Jian Wushuang replied. "I have a list of territories for you. Take a look and choose one as you like." Spirit Lord gave the list to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang started reading it. After a while, he made his decision. "This one," Jian Wushuang said while pointing at the name of a territory. "Blood Sword Territory?" Spirit Lord said with a smile, "Then I'll arrange it for you." 3 days later, Jian Wushuang went to Bloodsword Territory with a lord. Bloodsword Territory was larger than Iron Saber Territory and its previous owner was a novice lord. During this trip to Puppet Master Cave Mansion, that lord had no opportunity to enter the palace and was killed while fighting for treasures in the inner layer. Bloodsword Territory needed a new lord, so Jian Wushuang had come. "Swordsman, that is Lord Mansion of Bloodsword Territory," a purple-clothed lady, Misty Heartlord, said with a faint smile. "I have sent a message and had those generals wait for you." Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. "Let's go down." Jian Wushuang and Misty Heartlord flew toward Lord Mansion. Like Iron Saber Territory, Bloodsword Territory had an army called the Bloodsword Army, which had 20 generals in it. Those generals held the same ranks as commanders of Iron Saber Territory. Normally, Saint Realm experts at Stage 2 held the post, and a few of the generals were experts at Stage 3. Now, those generals were quietly waiting there. "The new lord will arrive today, right? I wonder which lord will come. No matter who comes, he has to be an expert at the Cloud Realm, far superior to us." The generals were discussing it in secret. They had received the news that their lord had died and the Marquis Piaoshua camp sent a new lord to take charge of their territory. At this moment, 2 figures slowly descended from the sky and appeared in Lord Mansion. The generals raised their heads and looked at the 2 figures. "That's Misty Heartlord. But who is the other guy? Misty Heartlord has her own territory and can't take charge of our territory, so is our lord the one beside her?" "He is the new lord." Those generals immediately frowned. Lords were almost always Cloud Realm experts, who were more powerful than those generals. Therefore, as long as their new lord was a Cloud Realm expert or even just a novice lord, they would be obedient to him. However, the black-robed young man with a long sword on his back was just a Saint Realm expert. Chapter 472, Bloodsword Lord. Chapter 472, Bloodsword Lord. "Gentlemen." Misty Heartlord looked at the generals and spoke. "This is your new lord, swordsman." On hearing this, the generals all had an odd expression. "He is really the new lord. You let a Saint Realm expert be our lord? Swordsman?" I have just come back from the flaming battlefield. I've heard of him. He killed a heaven-defying level expert, Deng Hua. Though he is powerful with amazing skills, he is just a Saint Realm expert. I heard that several days ago, 2 camps lost numerous lords in the exploration of the cave mansion. Doesn't our camp have any other lords? So they perfunctorily sent a Saint Realm expert here? The generals were discontented with the new lord. They only knew about their new lord's previous battle results of killing Deng Hua, so they were surely dissatisfied with him. If they had witnessed their new lord's performance in the Puppet Master Cave Mansion, they would have changed their opinions. However, now they all thought that a heaven-defying level expert was not qualified to be a lord. Jian Wushuang and Misty Heart Lord knew what they were thinking from their facial expressions. Misty Heart Lord smiled while looking at Jian Wushuang. The young man remained silent, but emanated overwhelming killing intent. Then a blood river directly swept out. Road to the underworld, hundredfold realm, and bloodfire domain were pulled together and surged forward. Suppressed by his powerful realm, those generals instantly fell down one by one. They tried to resist, but they could not stand up. They were all terrified. Swordsman, this is your realm technique? It's amazing. Misty Heart Lord acclaimed. Jian Wushuang gave a faint smile. If he exerted his full strength, his realm technique could suppress 30% of the strength of an advanced lord. It was no wonder that these experts at stage 2 or 3 were not even able to struggle for a second under his attack. Jian Wushuang slowly stretched out his hand and pointed to the generals who were kneeling in the blood river. Just then, an immaterial wave spread out around them. Suddenly, those generals turned pale and felt as if they were suffering from chi deviation. I pay my respects to my lord. I pay my respects to my lord. All the generals shouted out in terror. The suppression was terrifying indeed. Facing such realm suppression, the generals were unable to resist, which meant their new lord's strength was far superior to a Saint Realm expert's. Even their previous lord did not have such strength. They immediately realized that the young man's battle strength might be superior to an ordinary lord. Therefore, they submitted to him. Jian Wushuang nodded and waved his hand. Then the mighty blood river dissipated and the generals all became relieved. Stand up, Jian Wushuang said indifferently. All the generals stood up and looked in or at Jian Wushuang. His methods had thoroughly subdued them. Fools. Misty Heart Lord, who had been watching all of this, said with a smile, because our camp has appointed swordsman as your lord, we must have acknowledged his strength. Our camp has affirmed that he is qualified to be a lord, so why did you have any doubts? On hearing this, all the generals could not help lowering their heads. Fine. Misty Heart Lord shook her head and looked at Jian Wushuang. Swordsman, no. I should call you Bloodsword Lord. From now on, you're in charge of the Bloodsword territory. Since I've finished my job, I shall leave now. Thanks, Misty Heart Lord, Jian Wushuang said while cupping his fist. Soon afterward, Misty Heart Lord left. Jian Wushuang looked at the group of generals, pointed to the most powerful one, and asked, "What's your name?" "Lord, I'm Bing Hua," the man replied immediately. "Okay, aside from you, the rest of the people can go." Jian Wushuang waved his hands. The other generals bowed and left. I've just arrived here, so I am not clear about the business of the Bloodsword territory. Tell me about it, Jian Wushuang said while staring at Bing Hua. Okay. Bing Hua nodded. The whole setup in the Bloodsword territory was similar to that in the Iron Saber territory, and there were many families there. Usually, nothing special happened there. Therefore, Bloodsword Lord and the Bloodsword army had a lot of free time. Lord, only the Dragon Blood Gem Mine needs your attention in our territory, Bing Hua said. The Dragon Blood Gem Mine? Jian Wushuang was a bit surprised. He knew that the Dragon Blood Gem was a high-level gem, which was used for refining magic weapons. A complete Dragon Blood Gem Mine was valuable enough to attract the attention of ordinary lords. Bing Hua began to explain the reason why. Lord, a year ago, we found a Dragon Blood Gem Mine in our territory and took it, but Magic Flame Lord heard about it. Magic Flame Lord is an intermediate lord, who acts in a tyrannical manner. He thought he was powerful, so he wanted to step in. Our previous lord was a novice and unable to fight against him, so he could only compromise. During this year, our blood sword territory and the magic flame territory have shared the dragon blood gems 50/50ths. On hearing this, Jian Wushuang wore an odd expression. We found a blood gem mine in our territory and instantly took it, but the magic flame territory suddenly stepped in and grabbed 50% of the gems. This is, Jian Wushuang shook his head, but he understood. In this world, those who had power were respected. If he had not shown his strength to shock the generals, they would not have submitted to him. Chapter 473, The Dragon Blood Gem Mine. Chapter 473, The Dragon Blood Gem Mine. Magic Flame Lord is domineering. As we're part of the same camp and the Dragon Blood Gem Mine is in our territory, he agreed to share the gems with us 50/50ths. However, I heard that because our previous lord has died, Magic Flame Lord intended to hog all of it. Though you are our lord, I'm afraid Magic Flame Lord would not pay you any mind, Binghua said in a solemn tone. Oh, really? Jian Wushuang said with a smile. He had read the information on Magic Flame Lord and knew about his character. Binghua, Jian Wushuang said while looking at him, let's go visit Magic Flame Lord. Visit Magic Flame Lord? Now? Binghua was surprised. Yep, right now, Jian Wushuang replied with a faint smile. Soon after that, they set out. The Magic Flame territory was next to the Bloodsword territory, so they had contact with each other. One day later, Jian Wushuang arrived at the Lord Mansion in the Magic Flame territory. Please tell your lord that Bloodsword Lord pays him a visit, Binghua said to a guard of the Lord Mansion. Bloodsword Lord? The guard glanced at Jian Wushuang and sneered. A Saint Realm expert dares to call himself Lord? Piss off. Binghua's face fell. But Jian Wushuang wore an indifferent expression as he slowly opened his mouth. Magic Flame Lord. Jian Wushuang cried out. His voice seemed to be full of magic, reverberating through the entire mansion and lasting for a long time. A peevish, glum elder had been absorbed in a manual, when suddenly, he heard the voice, narrowed his eyes, and raised his head. When he stepped out and appeared in the sky above the mansion, he immediately saw Jian Wushuang with his hands behind his back. He is, Magic Flame Lord was shocked and a little bit angry. He had not participated in the exploration of the Puppet Master Cave Mansion, but he knew what had happened there. He knew many experts died and an expert named Swordsman rose in the fight. Swordsman was only a Saint Realm expert, but he had overwhelming strength, which could terrify intermediate lords. In the fight for the 4 interspatial rings, Swordsman killed Demon Soul Lord and Myriad Islands Lord by using some techniques. Demon Soul Lord was a superior lord. Although Myriad Islands Lord was just an advanced lord, he was the top master of formations and was not weaker than a superior lord. However, they had all been killed by Swordsman. Moreover, Swordsman had a puppet fighter at the Marquis level. Therefore, Swordsman had already become famous among the two camps. Sir, are you Swordsman? Magic Flame Lord went over and said with a smile as well as a hint of modesty. Sir. Binghua was a bit surprised, as Magic Flame Lord treated Swordsman respectfully. Magic Flame Lord, your guard didn't let me in and was even unwilling to send a message for me, so I had to shout. Please excuse me, Jian Wushuang said with a faint smile. On hearing this, Magic Flame Lord's face fell. He looked toward his guards. The guard who had refused Deng Hua's request was terrified, dripping with cold sweat. Idiot, come and apologize to Sir Swordsman. Magic Flame Lord scolded him. The guard immediately kneeled down and offered his apology. Don't worry about it. Jian Wushuang waved his hand. Then he looked at Magic Flame Lord and said, Magic Flame Lord, I've just taken up the post of Bloodsword Lord, so I came to pay you a visit. Bloodsword Lord? Magic Flame Lord was a bit shocked, but he immediately realized why Jian Wushuang had come here. Sir, no. Bloodsword Lord, let's go down and have a chat, Magic Flame Lord said. Fine. Jian Wushuang nodded and then gave an order to Binghua. Stay here. Okay. Binghua nodded respectfully. Jian Wushuang and Magic Flame Lord then left. Binghua stood in the void with an odd look on his face. What happened? Why did I feel that Magic Flame Lord was in awe of our Lord? Right, he must have been in awe of him. Otherwise, he would not have treated our Lord so politely. Not long after, Jian Wushuang walked out of the Lord Mansion, while Magic Flame Lord personally saw him out. Bing Hua, let's go, Jian Wushuang said. Then they left for the Bloodsword territory. Magic Flame Lord finally felt relieved. On the way back to the Bloodsword territory, Bing Hua asked in curiosity, Lord, what did you say to Magic Flame Lord? Nothing. We were just having a courteous talk, and I casually mentioned the Dragon Blood Gem mine, Jian Wushuang said. Casually mentioned? Bing Hua frowned. Right, that was enough, Jian Wushuang said with a smile. Don't worry, Magic Flame Lord is not stupid. He should know what to do. On hearing this, Bing Hua did not ask anything further. Soon after they came back, Bing Hua received the news that the people from the Magic Flame territory had withdrawn from the Dragon Blood Gem mine and clearly indicated that they would not step foot in the mine again. Bing Hua was stunned. In his mind, Magic Flame Lord was extremely domineering. When did he become so kind? Bing Hua did not know that Magic Flame Lord was just overbearing toward the weak, like the previous Bloodsword Lord, who was a novice lord. But when it came to Jian Wushuang, things were different. Even an advanced lord or a superior lord would treat Jian Wushuang politely. Magic Flame Lord was just an intermediate lord, so he did not dare to act in a domineering manner. He even worried that he might piss off Jian Wushuang and get killed by him. The Dragon Blood Gem mine and even the Bloodsword territory calmed down. Jian Wushuang had solidified his position. The 5th day after they returned, the Marquis Piaoxua camp sent something to him. Finally, Jian Wushuang thought with a hint of expectation. The thing that the courier had sent here cost Jian Wushuang 80,000 battle achievements. Chapter 474, The World Scroll. Chapter 474, The World Scroll. Mr. Swordsman, here you are. The courier gave an interspatial ring to Jian Wushuang. Thanks, Jian Wushuang said and then let him leave. Bing Hua. Jian Wushuang gave him a glance. Lord, Bing Hua replied respectfully. Ever since Jian Wushuang visited the Magic Flame territory and made Magic Flame Lord relinquish the Dragon Blood Gem mine, all the generals had become obedient to Jian Wushuang. I need to do a closed-door meditation. Don't interrupt me unless it's something very important, ordered Jian Wushuang. Okay. Bing Hua nodded respectfully. Soon after, Jian Wushuang arrived at a secret chamber in the Lord Mansion. He sat with his legs crossed and turned his hand over, where a scroll then appeared. World Scroll. Jian Wushuang looked at the scroll with a flicker of anticipation in his eyes. He had exchanged 80,000 battle achievements for it in the treasure vault of the Marquis Piaoxua camp. There were numerous treasures in the treasure vault. Some treasures were very helpful for experts to comprehend the origin, like the World Scroll, which was considered the most valuable among the treasures related to the comprehension of the world origin. Jian Wushuang was able to afford a treasure valued at 80,000 battle achievements because he had contributed the most in the Puppet Master Cave Mansion and received 120,000 battle achievements. He opened the World Scroll and then started studying it. Meditating for a while, Jian Wushuang opened his eyes with a smile on his face. This scroll contains a whole world indeed, Jian Wushuang said. The World Scroll was similar to the cottage world that he had encountered in the Baymore Cave Mansion, but more delicate than the latter. An expert could only meditate on the cottage world once, and his talent determined how long he could meditate on it. However, an expert could meditate on the World Scroll at any time. It's a pity that I could only meditate on the cottage world once, but now, this World Scroll is more exquisite than the cottage world. Moreover, I can meditate whenever I want. There's no time limit. Jian Wushuang nodded with satisfaction. The World Scroll was very useful to him. He took a deep breath and moved his mind. Then a blood-red figure appeared beside him. The figure wore a scarlet robe and a wicked scarlet mask. He was Jian Wushuang's slaughter doppelganger. In the Nanyang continent, Jian Wushuang's slaughter doppelganger had gotten killed once. Soon after that, his slaughter doppelganger formed again, but he rarely used it. Now, his slaughter doppelganger could help him a lot. Jian Wushuang waved his hand and gave Slaughter Doppelganger the 6-story pagoda that he obtained from the Puppet Master cave mansion. The 6-story pagoda contained 6 slaughter restrictions. The first restriction held 999 types of slaughter occult, which were a shortcut to the slaughter Dao. The 6-story pagoda was precious to a warrior who was meditating on the slaughter origin. The world scroll was only designed for comprehension of the world origin. From now on, I will focus on meditating on the world scroll and world origin, and my slaughter doppelganger has started meditating on the first restriction and slaughter occult, Jian Wushuang thought. His true self and his doppelganger worked separately, and with the help of 2 treasures, he was yielding double the results. As he stayed in his secret room, quietly perceiving through meditation, time passed by. In the Marquis Piaoshua campsite, Spirit Lord stood respectfully on the top of a huge pagoda. In front of him, a young man in a long silver robe casually sat on the step, supporting his forehead with his hand. Spirit Lord. The young man spoke in a warm voice. Marquis. Spirit Lord looked at the young man. The young man was Marquis Piaoshua, one of the 72 marquises in the Divine Land. 100 years have passed. Sword Suppression Valley will open again. Su Ming has sent invitations and invited many sword principle experts to take part in this meeting. As one of the 72 marquises, I also received the invitation. Master Su Ming asked me to recommend 3 experts, but it's not easy to find 3 sword principle experts, Marquis Piaoshua said in a low voice. Sword Suppression Valley? Master Su Ming? Spirit Lord raised his eyebrows. He had high status and knew a lot, so he knew about Sword Suppression Valley. Marquis, Master Su Ming asked you to choose 3 sword principle experts, so the 3 experts should not be too mediocre, or Sir Su Ming will get angry, Spirit Lord said. You're right. Marquis Piaoshua spread out his hands. Our camp has lots of experts, but as for those who are qualified to go to Sword Suppression Valley, I thought for a good while and can only assign 2 experts. One is Hunjian Lord. He has awakened his sword soul, so he's qualified for it. The other is Tianming Lord. Though he hasn't awakened his sword soul, he is remarkable in sword principle and adept at varied first-grade sword techniques. He even created a powerful sword skill. Those 2 lords are excellent. As for the third one, I've thought of several experts, but I feel that none of them are strong enough to go to Sword Suppression Valley. On hearing this, Spirit Lord said with a smile, Marquis, if the last expert has not been determined, I can recommend one. Who? Marquis Piaoshua looked at him. Blood Sword Lord, Swordsman, Spirit Lord said with a smile. Swordsman? Marquis Piaoshua was a bit surprised. Last time, you talked about the fight in the cave mansion of the inner area and seemed to mention Swordsman. I remember you spoke highly of him. Yes. Spirit Lord nodded. He is amazing. Though he is a Saint Realm expert, his battle strength is superior to many intermediate lords. More importantly, he is proficient in sword principle and has awakened the double first-grade sword soul. Chapter 475, The Heart-Killing Sword. Chapter 475, The Heart-Killing Sword. Double first-grade sword souls? Marquis Piaoshua's eyes lit up. In Sword Suppression Valley, they all pay more attention to those with a gift for sword principle instead of strength. In the past, most of the attendees were lords, but sometimes, Saint Realm experts took part in it. Swordsman has awakened double first-grade sword souls, which means he is powerful enough to go to the sword principle meeting. Haha. Okay, the last expert has been determined, Swordsman. Spirit Lord, go and tell him right now. Yes, my Marquis, Spirit Lord responded and then left. In the secret chamber of the Lord Mansion in the Bloodsword territory, Jian Wushuang and his slaughter doppelganger were sitting cross-legged and absorbed in meditation. He had been meditating for 3 months. Just at that moment, a surge of overwhelming slaughter origin was flowing in slaughter doppelganger, condensing a new mark of slaughter origin on his arm. Now his slaughter doppelganger had 5 marks of slaughter origin. Jian Wushuang could not help sighing about it. The 6-story pagoda's slaughter restriction is amazing. With the help of the slaughter restriction, Slaughter Doppelganger comprehended the slaughter origin faster and condensed the 5th slaughter origin mark within 3 months. At the same time, my true self condensed the 5th world origin mark by using the world scroll. Jian Wushuang and Slaughter Doppelganger condensed 5 origin marks each. Now he had 10 marks total. Jian Wushuang had condensed 4 world origin marks and 1 slaughter origin mark. 3 months later, the total slaughter origin marks was equal to that of the world origin marks. It was all due to the 6-story pagoda. As treasures that were helpful in the comprehension of the origin, the 6-story pagoda was more wonderful than the world scroll. The 6-story pagoda had 6 restrictions, but he was only able to decode the first restriction. 5 world origin marks and 5 slaughter origin marks. Although 2 types of marks can't release power at the same time, my strength has greatly improved from 3 months ago, Jian Wushuang thought with a faint smile. Just at that moment, Lord Binghua called from outside the secret chamber. Jian Wushuang used his mind, then his slaughter doppelganger instantly merged into his true self and 5 marks were seen on each arm. Afterward, he stood up, walked toward the door, and opened it to find Binghua respectfully waiting outside. My lord, Spirit Lord came and said he has an urgent matter for you, Binghua said. Oh. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and then went toward the main hall. Spirit Lord, Jian Wushuang said upon seeing his guest. Ha ha, swordsman. Spirit Lord greeted the young man warmly. They each sat beside a long narrow table. Then, maids came to serve them some good wine and delicious cuisine. Spirit Lord, because you've come here personally, I wonder what has happened. Jian Wushuang was quite curious. Spirit Lord had a high status. If it was regarding an ordinary matter, Spirit Lord could ask an underling to send a message to him. But seeing that Spirit Lord had come personally, it had to be a great matter. I need to tell you something, Spirit Lord said. Swordsman, have you heard about Sword Suppression Valley? Spirit Lord asked. Sword Suppression Valley? Jian Wushuang shook his head. Since he was a newcomer, there were many things that he knew little about in the Divine Land. Swordsman, have you heard of the Sword Ancestor? Spirit Lord asked again. Jian Wushuang was a bit surprised and subconsciously held his cup of wine tightly. I've not only heard about him, but actually, I'm the descendant of the Sword Ancestor. Jian Wushuang did not know why Spirit Lord had suddenly mentioned the Sword Ancestor, so he just tried to appear calm. I've heard some news about the Sword Ancestor and I only know that he was a super expert in the Divine Land, Jian Wushuang said with a casual smile. Yep, you're right. The Sword Ancestor was a real super expert. Spirit Lord sighed. Now, the 3 ancestors are known as the supreme experts in the vast Divine Land, but thousands of years ago, there were 4 ancestors. The Sword Ancestor was one of the 4 ancestors. The reason for his death is still unknown. After he died, the bloodline of the Sword Ancestor declined and soon disappeared from the Divine Land. Then, what's the relationship between Sword Suppression Valley and the Sword Ancestor? Jian Wushuang held his cup of wine and sipped it with a look of indifference. Spirit Lord continued, the Sword Ancestor was known as the ancestor of the Sword Principle. It said that he had awakened 6 first-grade sword souls and was the first sword principle expert in the Divine Land. He had a marvelous magic weapon, the heart-killing sword. The heart-killing sword. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes. He knew the best sword skill that the Sword Ancestor had created was called the heart-killing sword technique. He had kept all its 9 moves in mind, but he was only able to display the second move. But he had never heard of the heart-killing sword. The heart-killing sword is the first magic weapon of the sword principle. It's so powerful that it could easily kill a marquis just by using its own sword essence. Ever since the Sword Ancestor died, his corpse and treasures have become a mystery. No one knows where they are. He only left the heart-killing sword in Sword Suppression Valley, and his personal disciple, Su Ming, has been guarding there, Spirit Lord said. Jian Wushuang was shocked. Su Ming. The Sword Ancestor's personal disciple? Jian Wushuang asked as he looked at Spirit Lord. Right. Spirit Lord nodded with a smile. Thousands of years ago, Sword Ancestor traveled around the Divine Land and no one was able to match him. Su Ming was one of his personal disciples and also the most excellent one. Now, Master Su Ming is one of the 9 sovereigns in the Divine Land. Upon hearing that, Jian Wushuang was no longer able to remain calm. Chapter 476 A Trip to Sword Suppression Valley. Chapter 476 A Trip to Sword Suppression Valley. Su Ming is one of the 9 sovereigns and a personal disciple of the Sword Ancestor. After the Sword Ancestor died, the bloodline of the Sword Ancestor collapsed. Countless experts, including the Sword Ancestor's personal disciples and 7 Sword Emperors, were killed. If Su Ming really is the Sword Ancestor's personal disciple, how can it be impossible that he has survived? Unless... Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and thought of one possibility. When he was in the Ancestor's land, Mu Shan mentioned a traitor of the bloodline of the Sword Ancestor. Mu Shan said the traitor memorized all the 9 moves of the heart-killing sword technique. Although Mu Shan casually talked about it, Jian Wushuang still kept that in mind. Now the young man started wondering if Su Ming was the traitor. Spirit Lord did not know what Jian Wushuang was thinking about and continued speaking. As the first magic weapon of the sword principle, the heart-killing sword is extremely powerful. Except for the Sword Ancestor, no one is able to control it. What's more, the heart-killing sword is a sword of killing with a mighty killing intent. Master Su Ming could only suppress it in Sword Suppression Valley. By the way, that's why the valley has such a name. The heart-killing sword usually remains quiet, but it shakes violently every 100 years. Even Sir Su Ming is unable to suppress it. However, when its sword essence sweeps out and thousands of swords salute, it will be a precious opportunity for any sword principle warrior. Thousands of swords salute? Jian Wushuang asked in surprise. Sir Su Ming is broad-minded. He will invite many sword principle experts to Sword Suppression Valley before the heart-killing sword shakes violently. This time, Sir Su Ming also invites sword principle experts to this meeting, Spirit Lord said. Our Marquis is not a sword principle warrior, but as a Marquis, he has also received the invitation. Master Su Ming asked our Marquis to recommend 3 sword principle experts. Hun Jian Lord and Tan Ming Lord are on the list. And as for the last one, I recommended you to our Marquis. Jian Wushuang finally understood why Spirit Lord had come here. Swordsman, would you like to go to Sword Suppression Valley? Spirit Lord asked with a smile. Of course I'd like to. Jian Wushuang nodded without hesitation. Spirit Lord was not surprised by his reply. It would be a great opportunity for any sword principle warrior to watch the heart-killing sword shake and see thousands of swords salute. No one would refuse it. However, Spirit Lord did not know that the main reason Jian Wushuang accepted the invitation was that the heart-killing sword was the Sword Ancestor's magic weapon and that he was a descendant of the bloodline of the Sword Ancestor. In that case, you can make some preparations and then go with me, Spirit Lord said. Jian Wushuang nodded, called Bing Hua to come in, and gave him some orders. Then, he left with Spirit Lord. After traveling for a short while, they found themselves in front of a magnificent palace. The moment Jian Wushuang stepped into it, he saw a young man in a long silver robe, whose eyes sparkled with magic. Marquis. Both Spirit Lord and Jian Wushuang simultaneously addressed the young man. The silver-robed young man looked at Jian Wushuang and asked, "Are you swordsman? Spirit Lord often talks about you. Our camp has many lords, but a Saint Realm expert can actually become a lord, and you're the only one." Spirit Lord has overestimated me, Jian Wushuang replied with modesty. Marquis Piaoxue did not respond to this but simply waved his hands while saying, "Sit down please." Jian Wushuang sat by a long narrow table and immediately greeted the 2 lords beside him. Hun Jian Lord. Tianming Lord. In a polite manner, Hu Jian Lord and Tianming Lord, who had been awaiting his arrival, looked over at him and replied in succession, "Bloodsword Lord." Then, Marquis Piaoxue spoke again. "You should have heard about this already. Master Su Ming sent me the invitation personally, so I don't dare to take it lightly. The 3 of you are the strongest sword principle experts in our camp, so don't make me lose face." "We'll do our best," Jian Wushuang and the other 2 lords responded. "All right." Marquis Piaoxue nodded, took out a token, and gave it to Hunjian Lord. In half a month, Sword Suppression Valley will open. You should set out as soon as possible. Jian Wushuang and the other two lords looked at each other, bowed, and left. After they left the palace, the three lords got together. Hunjian Lord, you have been there before. Tell us more about Sword Suppression Valley, Tianming Lord said. Hunjian Lord had visited Sword Suppression Valley the last time it opened. It will take us several days to get there. Let's talk about it on the road, Hunjian Lord replied with a smile. Then, the three of them headed for Sword Suppression Valley. The reopening of Sword Suppression Valley provided a great opportunity for numerous sword principle experts in the Divine Land. Therefore, it also attracted the attention of other sword principle experts. 72 marquises all received the invitations from Master Su Ming, who was one of the 9 sovereigns. No one dared to refuse him, so each of the marquises recommended their 3 most excellent sword principle experts. Besides them, many solitary sword principle experts who were not under the control of the marquises but were famous for sword principle also received invitations. At that moment, a figure stood on an unknown mountain, which was outside of the territories that the 72 marquises controlled. He had a long sword on his back. Having silver-white hair and a mustache, he looked as if he had experienced many vicissitudes of life. His deep eyes seemed to contain an endless void. He sat with his legs crossed as he drank. Swish, 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 swish. The sound of wind breaking resounded. Instantly, a dozen figures appeared around the white-haired man. Those figures all were lords with mighty auras. They were led by a muscular elder, a superior lord. The leader looked at the white-haired man with a flicker of killing intent in his eyes. Jian Nantian, you won't escape this time. Chapter 477, The Barrier. Chapter 477, The Barrier. Escape. The white-haired man, who casually sat drinking, raised his head and his thoughtful dark eyes fell on the muscular elder. He continued, I never did anything like that. Since that's the case, I'll be sending you to hell. The elder roared and billowed forward like flowing smoke. The men with the elder started attacking as well. At this moment, as the white-haired man finally stood up, a sliver of light shot out. At the same time, he drew his long sword and an immense sword essence immediately began to flow. A Dao weapon. Seeing the weapon the man held, the elder and the nearby lords looked greedy. They began fighting instantly. A fierce battle broke out in the blink of an eye. However, it only took a moment for the battle to be settled. On the hill, the white-haired man sheathed his sword and took out his wine again. Standing still, he looked up into the boundless sky, emotionless. Around him lay piles of bodies. The elder, a superior lord, was among them as well. It has been nearly 5 years. Did he achieve his goal of exterminating Holy Emperor Palace? The white-haired man murmured. At this moment, while thinking about this person he spoke of, he finally began to smile. Sword Suppression Valley, located among an unbroken string of mountains, was famous for suppressing the heart-killing sword. Usually, the valley was quiet, but with the 100-year event drawing near, the valley had recently become crowded. At the edge of the valley, there was a towering group of palaces. Naturally, this was where Su Ming, one of the 9 sovereigns, lived. In one of the palaces, a woman's voice was heard. Your Highness, the news from the guards says that a lot of warriors have gathered outside the valley, a purple-clothed woman said respectfully. She was talking to the handsome man in front of her. The man was so good-looking that many ladies would feel ashamed when looking at him. With his eminent status and overwhelming power, he was definitely a prominent figure. He was Su Ming, a man who was second only to the 3 ancestors and a personal disciple of the Sword Ancestor. Tell them to open the array and let the experts in. Make sure they are well received, Su Ming ordered, with a voice that was both attractive and stunning. Understood, Your Highness. The purple-clothed woman nodded. She took her eyes, which were filled with fervor and worship, off the man and left. Su Ming was left alone. He stood in silence with his hands behind him, his eyes fixed on a painting at the top of the palace. The painting was of an old man standing on a peak. While holding a long sword in his hand, The old man was looking down over everything with sharp eyes as if he stood above the whole world. Old man. Su Ming stared at the elder in the painting, his face twitched, and his eyes filled with hatred. It was really malicious of you to leave a fatal flaw in the heart-killing sword. However, I was lucky, so that trick didn't kill me. I guess that move is the last trump card of the heart-killing sword, right? Wait and see. Before long, I will take control of the heart-killing sword and replace you, then I will be the new sword ancestor. Buzz. Suddenly, a wide channel appeared on the array in front of the warriors that had gathered at the valley entrance, and several people, led by the purple-clothed woman, walked out. So sorry to keep you waiting. Now, please come over here and show me your Marquis's token, said the woman. Following those words, the warriors formed a line and walked forward. Some of them had won some fame, but they all remained discreet and obedient when in the Sword Suppression Valley. After all, they were in a place ruled by Su Ming, one of the 9 sovereigns. Su Ming was powerful and had a good reputation. He did not have to invite the experts to his valley and share the rare opportunity involving the heart-killing sword's awakening with them, but he did. He even held a sword principal meeting for all the experts. Among the experts who were walking towards the woman one after another, Jian Wushuang, Han Jian Lord, and Tianming Lord were also waiting in line. While they were waiting, they noticed that not everyone was allowed to enter the valley. The conditions to enter the valley included an invitation or one of the 72 Marquise's tokens, as well as one's own level of power. At the entry stood a golden puppet fighter, and the experts had to defeat the puppet to enter the valley. This was something like a test for entering the valley. In fact, everyone who had made their way to the valley was excellent in sword principle and should be able to pass this test. Otherwise, they would only embarrass themselves. This was also the reason why Marquis Piaoxue had chosen the 3 quotas with caution. No matter how many opportunities the chosen ones could get, he had to be sure they were good enough to at least get into the valley. Soon it was Jian Wushuang's and the 2 lords' turn. We're the underlings of Marquis Piaoxue, and these are our tokens. Han Jian Lord handed the 3 tokens to the purple-clothed woman. Fine. Then please have a try. The woman nodded to them and pointed at the puppet. Jian Wushuang and the lords exchanged a glance. Han Jian Lord was the first one to take his turn, and he quickly found himself in a fierce battle with the puppet. When fighting with the puppet, the realm, cultivation, power, or comprehension in origin would not matter, only one's achievement in sword principle. Han Jian Lord effortlessly defeated the puppet with his 2nd-grade sword soul. Then it was Tianming Lord's turn. Though he had not awakened his sword soul yet, he had good achievements in sword principle and had mastered many 1st-grade sword techniques. After exchanging several moves with the puppet, he was able to beat it. Finally, it was Jian Wushuang's turn. Chapter 478, 3 Sword Souls. Chapter 478, 3 Sword Souls. Jian Wushuang planned to use his full strength against the puppet. Buzz. An enormous sword essence surged out as 2 giant sword soul phantoms appeared behind Jian Wushuang. The phantoms were almost 30 meters tall and contained a mighty sword essence. With the power of the sword souls, Jian Wushuang quickly defeated the puppet. The experts in the line were amazed when they saw Jian Wushuang's sword soul phantoms and how he defeated the puppet. Double sword souls, each 30 meters tall. Those are double 1st-grade sword souls. He has double 1st-grade sword souls? He is so talented. The experts discussed in amazement. Seeing Jian Wushuang's sword souls, the purple-clothed woman could not help but nod to herself. The representatives sent by Marquis Piaoxue are indeed powerful. You 3, please go this way. Jian Wushuang, Han Jian Lord, and Tianming Lord immediately followed the path and entered Sword Suppression Valley. As soon as they entered the valley, someone came to guide them. Look, that is where the heart-killing sword is suppressed. Han Jian Lord pointed at a huge mountain in the distance. The mountain was shaped like a volcano, with a huge hole at the center, and the heart-killing sword was placed at the bottom. At his first glance of the mountain, Jian Wushuang felt an obscure sword essence coming from the bottom. The sword essence was like a sleeping dragon. Once it woke up, the world would be shaken. With that, Jian Wushuang also sensed the triple kill sword on his back start to quiver. Hey! Jian Wushuang looked confused and tried his best to calm the sword down by holding the hilt tightly. In the end, he had to put the sword in his interspatial ring. Why is the triple kill sword so excited? Jian Wushuang pondered. The sword had been with him since long ago when he left Sword Marquis Mansion and ventured to the outside world. It was like his dearest comrade, but he had never seen the sword become so excited before. Yes, so excited that it was as if it was meeting family. The triple kill sword is a token to enter the ancestors' land. It may be related to the heart-killing sword somehow, Jian Wushuang thought. Sir, those are your residences. 3 days from now, the heart-killing sword will wake up. Before that time, please concede to stay here. The attendant led them to a yard with many rooms. The rooms were made especially for the invited experts. Thanks. Jian Lord thanked the attendant. After the attendant left, Jian Wushuang and the lords gathered by a table in the room. Swordsman, Tianming Lord, get yourselves prepared in the next 3 days. We can't miss the rare opportunity of the heart-killing sword's awakening, said Jian Lord. Among the three, Jian Lord was the only one that had been here before. Jian Lord, I've heard that at that time there will be 1,000 sword salute here. What exactly is that like? What kind of opportunity are we looking at? Asked Tianming Lord. Well, after a moment of pondering, Jian Lord continued, I don't know how to describe it. It's a unique experience, so you will have to see it for yourself at that time. After hearing your words, I can't wait for the sword principal meeting to begin, Tianming Lord said and smiled. Jian Wushuang showed a faint smile as well. He shared the Lord's feeling. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. During these last few days, experts from every corner kept rushing to the valley. At this moment, outside the valley, a ragged man with a weather-beaten face walked forward slowly. He had a long sword on his back and looked like he was middle-aged, but his hair was grey. The man arrived at the entrance to the valley. Sir, please show me your invitation, said the purple-clothed woman. I don't have such a thing, the man answered. The woman pulled her face. The surrounding experts' eyes immediately fell on the man. The Sword Suppression Valley was not accessible to everyone. Those who were in the valley were either recommended by their marquis or famous throughout the Divine Land and received an invitation from Su Ming. Without a recommendation or an invitation, one could not enter. So, without an invitation, I can't get in, asked the man in a flat tone. That's not completely true. The woman shook her head and added, Lord Su Ming has proclaimed that everyone with high achievements in sword principle will be allowed into the valley on condition that they can prove themselves. The man looked indifferent upon hearing the woman's words, but behind him, an overwhelming sword essence shot up, along with 3 towering figures. There were 3 sword soul phantoms standing side by side, and the center one was a first-grade sword soul that was over 30 meters high. On the left and right, the other 2 phantoms guarded the center one. They were over 24 meters tall and were second-grade sword souls. The 3 phantoms were surging with sword essence, enough to shock anyone in the world. He has 3 sword souls. Gosh! Who is he? The experts were aghast when they saw this scene. So was the women. How could he have 3 sword souls? The awakening of sword soul depended on one's talent in sword principle. An ordinary expert might awaken 1 sword soul at best, and in such cases, they would be called a genius. When the sword ancestors' bloodline was at its peak, there had been a few people who had awoken their sword souls over the decades. The people with 2 sword souls had been even fewer. As for those with 3 sword souls, they were monsters. Now, can I get in? The man's voice echoed through the valley. Chapter 479, A Fascinating Blow. Chapter 479, A Fascinating Blow. After a moment of silence, the purple-clothed woman nodded while saying, Since you have awakened 3 sword souls, you are definitely qualified for the sword principal meeting. The woman let the white-haired man pass. That made sense because few among the participants of the meeting had awakened even 1 sword soul, let alone 2. There were only 3 of them with 2 souls, including Jian Wushuang. The white-haired man was the first participant that had 3 sword souls so far. Being such a genius, the man was definitely qualified to join the meeting. While the man was heading towards Sword Suppression Valley, 2 intense gazes landed on him. He is Jian Nantian. Blood Mountain Marquis is looking all over the place for him. Who would think that he would come here? He really has guts. If only I could kill him. The 2 people currently talking were participants of the Sword Principle meeting as well, and both of them were experts in Sword Principle. They stared at the white-haired man intensely, like they were staring at some kind of treasure. It was a beautiful night. Jian Wushuang sat on the bed with his legs crossed. In front of him, the triple kill sword shivered violently and restlessly. 3 days have passed and it's still the same. Jian Wushuang looked at the sword and shook his head. Right then, a booming sound echoed through the silent night like thunder. Along with the sound, an overwhelming energy also swept over the area. Jian Wushuang raised his head in astonishment. Is a battle taking place here? He immediately put the triple kill sword back into his interspatial ring and left the room. Hun Jian Lord exited his room as well. What's going on? Is there someone who dares to make trouble here? We're in Sword Suppression Valley, a place ruled by Suming, aren't we? Let's go and find out. Jian Wushuang, Hun Jian Lord, and Tianming Lord rushed out and headed towards the sound. The boom had alarmed everyone in the valley and a lot of experts had exited their rooms and moved towards the area. They could see 3 people standing side by side on a roof with their strong aura radiating outwards. The air surrounding them was filled with killing intent. Among the 3, 2 were superior lords, and the last was an advanced lord. Opposite the lords was a man with an ethereal aura, his white hair fluttering with the wind, and his hand behind his back. His long shadow under the moon gave him the appearance of a towering figure. He is. When Jian Wushuang caught the sight of the man, his eyes flickered with joy and surprise. Go to hell! Suddenly, the 3 lords shouted and drifted towards the man like ghosts. The moment they moved, the white-haired man acted as well. As he removed his long sword from his back, a surging power erupted from the blade. A Dao weapon. Is that sword a Dao weapon? How could a lord have such a weapon? The power of the sword shocked the experts who were watching, and their gazes were filled with greed. All of the people in the surroundings were experts in Sword Principle, so that sword, a Dao weapon, drove them crazy. 3 sword soul phantoms rose up when the white-haired man unsheathed his sword. The tallest phantom was 30 meters high and seemed as if it was overlooking everything. The white-haired man made his move. It was a casual blow. A dazzling arc of light ran down the blade, so bright and fascinating that every onlooker was drawn to it. The experts were taken aback by the scene. They were being drawn into what they were seeing. Even the 3 lords, who were going to attack the man, were distracted by the fascinating blow. Before they could come back to their senses, the sword slashed their throats at an amazing speed. PSSSH, PSSSH, PSSSH. With 3 sounds of a sword slashing flesh, the 3 lords stopped moving, frozen with horrified looks on their faces. The white-haired man resheathed his sword. The 3 lords' dead bodies fell backward to the ground once the sword was returned to its sheath. Horror. Shock. Those were the onlookers feeling. This man killed 2 superior lords and 1 advanced lord with 1 strike. How powerful. Is he a marquis? His attack was so stunning yet so terrifying. Everyone was filled with amazement. This guy, Hun Jian Lord and Tianming Lord widened their eyes. However, after seeing how the man killed those 3 guys, Jian Wushuang touched his nose with an odd look on his face. Boom. Suddenly, several figures with powerful auras approached the white-haired man, and the leading person was the purple-clothed woman who had guided them into the valley. The woman had an unhappy expression on her face when she saw the dead bodies on the ground. Sir, you showed no respect to my lord by killing his guests under his eyes, the women scolded. The onlookers immediately looked toward the man. The man fetched out a bottle of wine, took a seat on the roof, and started drinking. He showed no emotion to the woman's words as he replied, "They wanted to kill me, so I killed them." His words were flat and indifferent but stunned the woman. The onlookers put on a quaint face when they heard his words. Killing at will was not allowed in the valley. However, if it was a self-defense, it could be forgiven. After all, no one would just watch his opponents kill him without doing anything. Everyone present had seen the three lords try to kill the man and how the man defended himself by killing them. Chapter 480, Father and Son. Chapter 480, Father and Son. The purple-clothed woman stared at the white-haired man for a long time before saying, "Sir, if I'm not mistaken, you are the famous Gen Nantien, aren't you?" "He is Gen Nantien." The name caused an uproar among the experts. "This is beyond my expectations. I heard that he killed all three of Blood Mountain Marquis's sworn brothers and enraged him. The Lord is looking all over the place for him." "I heard that too. What's more, the Lord also said that whoever brings him Gen Nantian's head will be given a Dao weapon." No wonder the three dead lords had wanted to kill him. They were after the reward, and maybe Gen Nantian's long sword as well, since it's also a Dao weapon. That's to say, killing him can earn us 2 Dao weapons. Well, I really admire his courage. He has enraged one of the top 2 Marquis, but he still dares to participate in this public meeting. If I were him, I would hide somewhere or simply leave the Divine Land and become a local lord in the outside world. Discussions were heard continuously, mixed with wondering words. Many people at present had heard of Gen Nantien before. Those who had not finally known about him more or less from the discussion. When they learned that they could gain 2 Dao weapons by killing Gen Nantien, their eyes betrayed their frenzied desire to kill him. "Father." Gen Wushuang looked at the white-haired man in surprise. The man was none other than his father, Gen Nantien. It had been 5 years since he last saw his father. Now, they had finally met again. However, Gen Nantien kept drinking in silence and did not seem to care about the discussions all these people were having on him. The purple-clothed woman was not annoyed at the man's cold manner and said with a smile, "Since you were forced to do so, I will have to let it go then." She looked around and continued, "Ladies and gentlemen, as all of you were invited here as my lord's guests, so be a guest. Whoever makes trouble during the sword principal meeting will be my lord's enemy." The words echoed through the valley and intimidated the experts, forcing them to calm down. They finally realized that they were at a place ruled by Su Ming, and anything that crossed the line would be regarded as a challenge against the Lord's authority. Despite this, not everyone could ignore the temptation of 2 Dao weapons. For the sake of Su Ming, they would put the desire aside until the meeting was over, but after that, they would not hesitate to kill Gen Nantien. Well, the sword principal meeting will begin tomorrow, so everyone should go back and rest well. Having said this, the woman was the first one to leave with her group. The experts headed back as well. "Let's go back too," Hun Gen Lord said to Gen Wushuang. "Sorry, you go first." "I have something to do here," Gen Wushuang replied. Hun Gen Lord shot Gen Wushuang a surprised glance, but he didn't say anything more and left with Tianming Lord. Soon, the valley was quiet again. A bright moon was high in the sky, causing the ground to be slightly illuminated by the moonlight. Under the moon, Gen Nantien sat alone on the roof, drinking. His shadow was long and his hair was waving with the wind, giving him an ethereal look. A figure approached him from behind. Gen Nantien looked back and saw Gen Wushuang. The emotionless man finally showed a smile. "Father," Gen Wushuang called in a soft voice. "Come here, take a seat." Gen Nantien threw the wine to Gen Wushuang and added, "Have a drink with me." Gen Wushuang caught the wine and sat beside his father. "You've grown a lot during the last few years." Gen Nantien stared at Gen Wushuang with a grin. "Not as much as you have, father," Gen Wushuang said and smiled. He knew very well that even though he had made good progress and was considered an expert in the Divine Land, he still could not hold a candle to his father. At least, he could not display an attack as fascinating as the one his father had just shown. "Currently, without external forces, I can battle an advanced lord, but there is a long way to go before I can kill a superior lord and 2 advanced lords with 1 strike, as father has done," Gen Wushuang thought. "I thought it would be 10 years before I saw you again, but it's only been less than half of that, hasn't it?" said Gen Nantien. "Yes, father." Gen Wushuang answered and smiled. Holy Emperor Palace has been destroyed, right? His father asked. Yes, it was destroyed 3 years ago, Jian Wushuang answered. Really? Jian Nantian raised his brows. That means it only took you 2 years to destroy it after I left. Well done, son. Much sooner than I had expected. Not bad. Jian Wushuang grinned. The father and the son chatted while drinking under the moon. When in front of strangers, Jian Wushuang was always aloof and would only be more sociable to his friends. However, at this moment, with his father, he was unrestrained and behaved like a child. As for his father, Jian Nantian, who took nothing heart except his sword, he regarded Jian Wushuang as being more important than himself and his sword. Father, why did they say that you offended Marquis Xiefeng? Jian Wushuang suddenly changed the topic. Marquis Xiefeng? Jian Nantian answered while smiling, there is no need to be afraid of him. We should pay more attention to Su Ming. Su Ming. Jian Wushuang looked grave. Is he really the person who betrayed the sword ancestor? You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.